Throughout the ages, people have sought after truth. Our generation is no different. I think it's important, though, that we pause for a moment and ask ourselves a very basic question. Does truth exist? Is there such a thing as absolute truth? I asked that question to a group of people that I meet with not long ago, said, does truth exist? And they said, no, we don't think so. What is true for me may not be true for you. Absolute truth does not exist.
If someone tells me that there is no absolute truth, first thing I would say is that's an absolute statement. And so basically you've just invalidated what you said.
I responded, great, we're going to go on a field trip. We were in a third-story apartment, and I said, we're going to all go up on the roof and we're going to jump off the building. Now, it may take 5 tries, it may take 50 tries, it may take 500 tries, but if there is no such thing as gravity, if that is not an absolute truth, then sooner or later one of us is not going to fall. The group began to realize that absolute truth does indeed exist, but then we tried to figure out what categories involve absolute truth and what areas involve simply relative truth.
There is such thing as relative truth. I like certain kinds of food. I like certain colors better than others. But that doesn't make it absolute truth.
Where does spiritual truth fit into all of this? Is it relative or is it indeed absolute? My group said that they really wished that it would be absolute. If they're going to search after something, it would only make sense and make it easier if they were searching for something real and something that they could find. But their opinion was that if absolute truth exists, it may be that no one has ever discovered it yet, and it may be that others have distorted it. We all have a need for things in our lives to be absolute. Let me give you an example. On July the 16th of 1999, John F. Kennedy Jr.'s plane plummeted into the Atlantic Ocean, killing him and the other passengers that were on board. Experts say that the problem was vertigo. His mind told him that he was flying straight and level, but in fact his plane was in a perilous spin that killed everyone. Many people question the existence of absolute truth, and yet they're absolutely convinced that the path they're following is true for them. In reality, many people are just spinning out of control. We see signs of it perhaps. We live with incredible daily stress. We don't find the happiness or the joy that we're looking for. And even when we have achieved our goals, they end up being meaningless. One of the reasons that those things happen is because we've not found the truth. So the big question is, how do we find truth? And I believe that there are at least 4 areas where we can look for truth. The first way is to rely upon our opinion. An opinion is probably the least reliable way of discovering absolute truth. I can have an opinion about what the best flavor is. I can have an opinion about what animal makes the best pet. That truth may not be true for you. I can also have opinions that are right, and I can have opinions that are wrong. I can have an opinion about which way is north. I can have an opinion about which way is up and which way is down. I can have the opinion that gravity does not apply to me, and yet if I jump off of a high enough place, I'm going to fall to my death. A second way that we can discover truth is through reason. We can use logic, we can use philosophy, we can use mathematics. The problem with that is that sometimes our presuppositions and even our arguments are not as logical as they appear to be on the surface.
We need to remember that reason, although to all appearances might appear true, ultimately can begin with a false premise. Just like when you take a stick and you place it in a bucket of water, you know for a fact that it's straight, but it appears that it's bent. And so human logic and human reason often, though it appears to be the way to absolute truth, really can be faulty from its very beginning.
The problem with using logic and reason as a means of discovering truth is that you can start out with a proposition that is only slightly off-centered, and you may not even realize it. But then as you build upon that as a foundation, your argument can get farther and farther away from the truth, and you might not even realize it. You may, for example, be able to point in the general direction of where New York City is right now. If you're here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you would point to the northeast. But if you took the direction of your finger and projected it out 2,000 miles, you could potentially miss New York City by hundreds of miles. You start out with a small variation that is off-center or is a little bit off base, and the conclusions that are drawn from that can be astronomically far off. Some people believe that mathematics is the purest form of reason. They say 2 plus 2 always equals 4, and the numbers don't lie. And yet people can take figures and manipulate them any way that they want. We realize that not every piece of logic, not every mathematical formula leads us to absolute truth with the degree of certainty that we would like. Another way of knowing truth is through tradition. Tradition can be described by social customs or history. It can even be described by laws that a society adopts. Some of those things give me stability. They give you stability. Truth for me can be what I'm used to. The problem with that is that legislation changes, times change, customs change, and not everything in our tradition or our history is consistent from one culture to another. By definition, that's not absolute truth. It may be more of a relative truth, but it doesn't get us at the very heart of what we're looking for as individuals. The most reliable form of discovering truth is through revelation. Let me give you an example. If you're watching a magician do a trick and you wonder how he's doing the trick, you can have an opinion about it. Your opinion can be right or your opinion can be wrong. You can even apply logic to it. You can reason some things that could have happened and things that could not have happened. You may even find something in your past, in your tradition, something that you can relate to that may give you a clue as to how the magician did the trick. But the most reliable way of discovering how a magician does his trick or her trick is if the magician will sit down with you and be open and honest and describe to you exactly how he or she does the trick.
If you want to know how to run your car, you need to talk to the people that built the car or look at the automobile manual. And there's the truth on how your car should run and the things you need to do to fix your car if it breaks.
You know, it's the same way with life. The most reliable form of discovering absolute truth when it comes to spiritual things is to go back to what God himself said. I personally believe that we have absolute truth in the revelation that God gave to us. If we're looking for questions about life, we need to go back and see what God said about very specific things. We need to go back and hear what his plan was and the way that he made us and created us. You know, Jesus himself once said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." He also said one time, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." And so truth comes in the form of a person. Truth comes in its absolute sense in the form of Jesus Christ. And it all comes back down to having a relationship with him. And that relationship being the very center and heart of what God wants from us in this life.